Hello, everyone. We're still at our headquarters in Atlanta this week. We had a delightful visit yesterday with Michael LeGrand, and we're looking forward to interviews today with two more industry veterans. You may not be aware that our office is located in the Site Mix facility, a local pressure grouting and volumetric concrete operation not far from Perimeter Mall in Atlanta. One of my dear friends, Dale Henderson, a principal of Site Mix, is our landlord. If Dale's name rings a bell, it's because he was one of the former owners of Tucker Concrete. To refresh your memory, Vulcan Materials bought Tucker Concrete, Tucco as it is fondly called, in August of 2010. Several months later, Vulcan purchased Fulton Concrete, another fine family business, completing their entry into the ready-mix business in Metro Atlanta. By the way, you can learn more about Tucco by listening to my interview with Buddy Pittard, one of the original owners. Dale, thanks for joining us today. I've been looking forward to this interview, and I'd love for you to share with our audience about yourself, life before concrete, if there is such a thing for you.
Thank you, Bill. Glad to be here. And I've been looking forward to this as well, especially when you first told me you'd come up with this idea, and what a great time you've had making these, hearing from industry folks. So I'm excited to be here.
Well, it's so funny because when I meet with people and we talk about, preparing for the interview, I always try to emphasize that I really would like to hear personal stories. It's always nice we can dive into the business, we'll get into the business and all of that, but it's nice to know a little bit about people in their early life, and it's always difficult, and especially for you, I think it's going to be tough because when you were a little tyke, you were crawling around concrete mixers, so I don't know that we can separate early life from ready mix, but do, if you would, tell us, let's begin with kind of your personal story, what you enjoy, what you were like,
Sure.
How you grew up, where you grew up, the things that you did as a kid, just a little bit of a personal flavor so we know who you are.
Thank you. Well, I grew up in Tucker, Georgia, and I was adopted, so that's kind of a cool little fact. Adopted into a family that had ready mix. And so went to Tucker High School. My entire family, grandmother, everybody, aunts, uncles, cousins, sisters, parents, everybody graduated from Tucker High School, and had a little family business there. Another little side note, the Hendersons will have lived in Tucker 200 years.
No, I did not know that.
2028. Yeah. And so grew up going to the ready mix plant with my dad and grandfather and my uncles, and my aunts have worked there. My grandmother worked there. I think everybody had a little job there at some point, sweeping or doing something. And so grew up in Tucker, went to Tucker High School, went to Auburn University, graduated, came back.
What year was that, Dale, that you got out of Auburn?
That was 1993.
93.
And so I tell, when I was thinking about this as you asked me, I had I've had three lives in this. Yeah. I had as a kid growing up,
right,
where the guys that worked at Tucco, the employees, we had great employees. I grew up with those. I was a snot-nosed little kid running around, borrowing nickels to get bubble gum out of the bubble gum machine, or, following guys around, riding in their trucks, or whatever. So that was my first, riding my go-kart around the plant. And so you had that part. And then I had the part where I worked there, and then we sell.
Yes.
And then I start life after Tucco, and which is where I am now. But so the early life was great.
Yes.
Kid, what kid didn't want to grow up with loaders and dump trucks and heavy equipment? And my dad was always working, doing something at the house, and so just.
No, that's a really nice way to frame it and accurate, right? I mean, you could frame it in many ways, but 3 parts. The kid in the concrete, in the concrete plant, and then coming back
Right.
and being in the business, and then after the business.
And interesting, because most people that work for a company don't see the kid grow up as a kid, and then all this. And I hate using the word boss, because we work together. I've always said that, but that all of a sudden this kid that you grew up with was your boss.
Yes. Yes, I get it. Right.
It's a totally
It's
different,
kind of a different,
totally
and
different.
a little bit of a challenge, two-edged sword in a way.
It is a double-edged sword. But I felt like growing up, I worked hard. I started driving a ready-mix truck when I was 17 on a regular car license.
Wow.
And so I earned the respect, because I would
Yes.
come in after school, or
Yeah.
my cousin Chris and I would drive after school, or in the summers we would drive, and Parker, my dad's cousin, was the dispatch, and he would give us the crappy loads. And
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
yeah. So
Let me. Here's the challenge of our little time.
Okay.
Our time
All right.
together. I can feel it right now. I knew that it was going to happen, but it's already happened. 'Cause when I do these interviews, my mind, I start thinking, "Oh, I want to know about this. I want to know about that."
Right.
But one thing I think in terms, and I want to think about our listeners.
Okay.
And things that they would like to hear. So let's start into that middle section. In
Okay.
other words, when you are now,
Graduated from Auburn.
Yeah, you're out of Auburn. So step one, or first thing, give us the family tree of Tucko,
Okay.
if you would. I know I still can't totally keep up with it. So why don't you start and take a few minutes,
Okay.
and kind of frame. Here's the family tree.
Grandfather worked at General Motors.
And that was Mark.
Mark Henderson.
Yes. Okay.
Left General Motors, mortgaged his house and everything, started a ready-mix plant here in Tucker. I think, if I'm not mistaken, there were 19 ready-mix companies in Atlanta at the time, like Camel Coal and some others. No, way
before
This
Bowen.
is 1959.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
That's right, 1959.
yeah, and so anyway, so he started. My dad had graduated from Southern Tech with an engineering degree, works for the DOT, builds a bridge in Decatur. My grandfather begs him to come work for him. He leaves the DOT job, starts there. They get some trucks, start growing. Patillo starts growing in Tucker.
Right.
They start growing. My grandmother's the dispatch, works in the office. My 2 aunts got married. So Robert Henderson, my dad, Mark Henderson, my grandmother, Marguerite Henderson, my aunt, Marcia, we call her Sissy, she marries Buddy Pittard, Robert Pittard, who you introduced. We call him
Yes.
Buddy. Buddy comes after Sissy and Buddy get married. He's in the office. Then Jane, my dad's youngest sister, marries Mark McWhorter, who we call Slick. So Slick comes to work there. Slick's in charge of the materials. We got everything on rail. We got cement on rail. We got rock and sand on rail. Now we got some local stuff as well, but so Slick handled the materials. Buddy handled the office. My dad was the mechanic, and then my grandfather was kind of the orchestrator of it all.
Yes.
All right. I believe both Marcia or Sissy and Jane both worked there at some point. And then I started working there when I was 8. My grandfather had uniforms made for me.
That's so
It was
cool.
awesome. I got pictures.
I've seen it. It's unbelievable.
And then, my sisters, Pam, Kim, and Jill, they've worked there in the summers. My cousins, Chris Pittard, who was Sissy and Buddy's son, Chris worked there. Jeff and Terry, who are Slick and Jane's son and daughter, Jeff
Yep.
McWhorter.
I know Jeff.
And they had worked there. We all did something at some point working there.
Yes.
And so that's basically the
that's
entire
very
family.
helpful.
Yeah, and then my sisters, Pam, my oldest sister, her husband worked there 2 different stints.
Yes.
Brian Cunningham. Yeah. So, and then Parker, I alluded to Parker Weed. He was a dispatch.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was.
So, no, that's really. In fact, I may now finally see the tree for the first time in all of these years. You did a nice job, and I can go back and listen to this. And you know, as I listen, you know, certainly the story, the overview, if you will, of Tucker Concrete wouldn't be complete without Tony Cape.
Tell exactly.
So he wasn't a family member. I mean, he was in terms of being. Tell that part. Introduce Tony into this picture.
So Tucko started in '59. Went through boom years of Atlanta, and you've interviewed David Grayson, some other people that touched on. So Williams Brothers comes in, grows like crazy. The Williams are here. They sell out to Blue Circle. The Bowens then go into the ready mix business, who are cousins to the Williams.
Yes.
And are related somehow.
Yeah.
And there's a concrete price war in Atlanta in the early to middle 80s. And so price falls. Tucko we only had one plant.
Yeah.
It ebbed and flowed. And so they're struggling. They want to sell. My dad sells to Buddy, and then Buddy takes the company. He hires Tony Cape, who came from Thomas Concrete. Tony came in. It would be another great interview because Tony came in when times were struggling, and
there was a great recession, or not great recession. There was a recession in '83,
and then '88ish.
Yeah, exactly.
And so Tony comes in right around that time. I'm graduating from high school, go to college. Chris goes to college. We both come back in '93. Okay, so it's Buddy, Tony, my grandfather's still there, my dad's still there, everybody's still there. Slick, everybody. And so we come in. Buddy had built a plant in Cumming in 1988. And Cumming was doing pretty good. Cumming was just about to blow up. And Tucker was doing okay. And then Chris graduated a little before I did, and they were leasing a cruddy concrete plant from Wiley Puckett in Grayson.
Huh.
He was an asphalt guy. His son did curbs and stuff like that. So it's a portable plant that is probably still there, that I think was built 2 years before they invented concrete.
Right.
I mean, this plant was terrible.
Yeah.
They're running out of there. Buddy cobbles together a plant in Grayson. Chris and I graduate from college. Chris is in a band, lives in Athens. I'm living at home. And Buddy sits us down and says, who's going to be the plant manager? And Chris was like, well, I want to be the plant manager. And I was like, I want to be the plant manager. And so he said, I'll tell you what, I'll flip a coin. Heads.
You're kidding
Chris
me.
is the plant manager. Tails. Dale is the plant manager. No, this is the honest truth.
No, I hear you.
So flip a coin. Chris is plant manager. I'm salesman. I meet Tony Cape. So Tony's our boss. Tony takes me around, teaches me how to sell. The man can sell ice cubes to an Eskimo.
Right.
And so that's how I got started. Then Buddy came to Chris and I. Greatest advice he ever said was, make a decision and I'll back you up.
Yeah.
Whatever it is, right or wrong, make a decision, we'll back you up. And it gave us the freedom to grow and to make decisions and help grow. So we ended up buying some front discharges, and that was the game changer for us.
What year do you think that was, roughly?
1994.
94.
We bought 10 front discharges.
Yeah.
We put 3 in Cumming, 4 in Tucker, and was that 7? And 3 in Grayson.
Right.
Yeah. So was definitely the game changer for us. And then we experienced.
Were those advanced? Do you remember?
They were advanced.
Yeah.
And I have my family chronicled tons of stuff. I have probably 4,000 to 5,000 pictures of Tucko from 1959 till we sold. And so I actually have a picture of Chris and I making the first loads in those 2 front discharges on a slab in Grayson. Cool. And then
let me ask you this. You said that was 94?
94.
Roughly. I mean,
94, 95.
Yeah, and so Ernst had come
in the late 80s,
late 88, 89.
And they had grown and grown and grown. David Ernst and those guys, what a great job they did.
Yes.
Had only fronts.
Yes.
And so we got a few. We said we thought it would help us, and sure, it helped us get some footings. And
right.
at the time, footings and walls were huge in Atlanta. And so just started growing there.
Yeah, the poured wall. I can run off so many rabbit trails, but the poured wall, the whole poured wall phenomenon in Atlanta goes back to, I remember Jan Wilson, and
Peacock,
that was probably 75, 76. Actually, when poured walls, and that was
Right Way. All those guys came here from Iowa. And that might be another good one for you.
That was Daryl Hovden, who recently died.
Oh no!
I learned that Daryl passed, still in Iowa, but like in the last month.
Right.
He's a young guy, 69.
Wow.
Anyway, let me ask you this. There's so much.
I'm so sorry. I could talk all day.
Let me. When you look back over all these years, what would you say are the big changes in ready mix industry in Georgia? Like really you know what I mean, the pivot points.
Absolutely. Well, I had 2. I'd written down 2 before I came.
Yeah.
But you and I were sitting here talking, getting ready, just kind of catching up this morning. The first one that comes to mind is technology.
Yeah.
We were talking about how you had to call somebody on the phone, a real estate agent or something like that. Go back
on a landline.
Go back to prior to the 90s, the middle 90s, and we had landlines, and you called your phone, you called your order into the dispatch. There was no phone on the job.
Unreal.
You had to take there were map books.
Yes.
You know, we had the
yes.
I can't remember the name of
I remember those.
We'd go to Bradford Maps in Decatur and buy those huge map books that had every street in Atlanta. So you would get the customer to tell you kind of where you were, landmarks, but it was on the phone, and there was no calling the customer. If you were late or the truck got lost, couldn't find you, the customer would typically drive and find a payphone and call you and, you know, ask the age-old question, where's my concrete?
And then the big breakthrough, I would think, now that I'm listening, would be when the pager. The pager was...
Pagers, right.
I mean, that was...
I graduate from Auburn. Buddy, we flips the coin. I become a salesman, get a pager, and Tony says, you need your he says you need 3 things. You need a pencil, you need a credit app,
yes,
your business card,
yes,
okay, and the 4th one would be your pager,
right,
and the 5th one would be a roll of quarters. So he would.
So you get on the.
So you could find a payphone, and you had a roll of quarters to pay for the call, and so. So technology, because now, you know, now you have a cell phone, it's on the job, you know, you have GPS. The people just don't. We're the last generation that's halfway through technology.
Yes.
We were before technology and after technology.
Yes.
So we knew what it was like before. We know it was. I mean, Plant 2 in Tucker. We had 2 plants in Tucker.
Right.
The original plant was there, and then they built a secondary plant in the early 80s while they renovated the first plant. So Tucker has 2 plants. Plant 2 was a manual batch by hand up until we automated it in the late 90s.
Wow.
Yeah.
And when did the computerized, when I came into the industry in 2002, I mean, things were pretty far along. So when did the Alcon, Command Alcon,
Richard Simmons.
Richard
Simmons. I mean, how I would love to interview Richard, because he touched all the ready mix guys' businesses. He went to work for Williams Brothers, and there's probably some guy that can tell you there. And he had graduated from Tech, and he invented some ways to use. They used punch cards.
Really?
To put their mix designs in.
No kidding. I didn't know that.
And so Richard got started in Atlanta, then the Alcons and the Commands and everybody came in. We had one, Bill, it would weigh up the material, but we had to discharge it.
Yeah.
In Tucker. And it had you had the old knife point scales.
Wow.
Where the scale was by a cable going to the from the scale to the scale head, and then and I gotta stop here and just mention some folks. The employees we had at Tucko, the Eddie Browns, the JJs, the Walter Neals, the Willie Middlebrooks, the guys that were just there. That Eddie was the batch man. He worked for Slick. And Slick gave everybody a nickname. JJ's name's not JJ.
Right.
His name is Thurmond Clark.
Yes.
Buddy nicknamed him. Slick nicknamed him JJ.
Yeah.
And so Slick gave everybody a nickname. Everybody had a nickname. But anyway, Eddie was the batch man, and he would stand up there and pull the levers.
Unbelievable.
Like when it was literally a pull lever deal.
Yes.
And so... Dean Brown, Eddie's brother, passed away last year. We went to the funeral, and I saw Eddie. Hadn't seen him in a long time, but anyway, I just mentioned the employees that were there. That that all were there for the process as we grew.
Right.
Once again, JJ, you did his interview, and JJ's a little ill.
Yes. Yes.
But he is just an incredible man.
He's an incredible guy.
Incredible man.
And I'm thinking, from what I've heard from some of the other interviews, his interview, that I guess you could say there was a kind of a big transformation in terms of the ready mix truck, and that was occurring when I came in. When I came in, the trucks were pretty Spartan. Many of them didn't have air conditioning. They'd have a little fan, and like JJ said, you could see the ground through the floorboard. So there wasn't the
B61 Max. That's the truck I learned to drive on, was a quadruplex B61 Mac. That if you missed a gear, you stopped.
Oh my!
And then you restarted.
Wow.
JJ. Gosh, I can't think of his name right now. That taught me how to drive, but learned to drive the quadruplex, started driving those on the yard, because even as younger than that, my grandfather taught me how to drive a 3 on the tree, and I would water the yard down to keep the dust down. And so
the trucks today, man, you look at a new mix. I mean, the cabs are just like a Cadillac.
The new Western Stars, Bill, the cab wraps around you. You can easily reach everything. There is air conditioning. I'm trying to think. The first truck that we had that had air conditioning, I want to say, was in '99.
Yeah, that sounds
or 2000.
Right. Because when I came to Fulton in 2002, we were an all Mac fleet, all rear discharge.
We were too.
And if I remember, best I remember was maybe 50-50 on AC, so that sounds about right. And then we started soon after I got there, switching over to the Allison automatic transmission.
Another game changer.
That was a big game
changer.
In terms of getting drivers.
You had asked the technology.
Yes.
Admixes, I think, have changed.
Yes.
What we could do.
Breakthrough type changes.
Like it was big in the 50s and 60s. If you could make 4,000 psi, you were doing something. And now, I mean, we can make 4,000 on in your
anything. Sleep.
And then and the other big change, Bill, that I would be remiss not to mention is the shift to verticals. That the cement company started buying independents, and And
yeah, that's true. That's true.
We shifted quickly there from 100% independence to probably, maybe 50-60% verticals in Atlanta. In Alabama, it's like crazy, like 80-90%.
That's a great point. It makes a big difference. We're still, as you and I have discussed, what makes, I think, our industry in Georgia really, really special. Nothing against the verticals, but we got a lot of family businesses, and it really makes for a whole different experience.
The verticals that are here, though, has been within the last 30 years. So it was the families,
Right.
a lot of the families, the guys. I was talking to an Argos guy today, and he was talking about David Black and those guys. David Black's been there like 30 years.
Right.
And he came from Williams Brothers, which was a family business. And a lot of the guys that are at these Ready Mix USA, Argos, Walker Concrete, those are all verticals, but the people that were there are still there.
Yeah, there's a heavy family.
That's why it's still
kind of
like
a
family.
context.
Yeah.
Tell you what, let's do now. So many different ways to go. Why don't we switch over and take a little bit of time and talk about life after Tucko? Take us to that third. You mentioned three. So Vulcan. Let's start with the sale.
Okay.
Let's start right with the sale.
Okay.
August of 2010, and pick it up.
All right. Middle of the Great Recession.
Yeah.
Vulcan wants to get into the ready mix business down here. They had, they have bigger plans. Obviously they think in hundreds of years when you start a quarry, and so they had some cement deals and some rock deals. I don't know the exact thing. Once again, that's a David Grayson question back then, or one of those guys, and so they buy us out. We know that their Fulton is to follow. And so you have two teams merging with that. I was there for a short period of time. It was very hard for me because I loved our family business, and I just couldn't watch it change.
Right.
It was.
Oh yeah.
It was going to be very hard for me.
Yeah.
So I had a year-long, I'll tell this story on David Grayson, have a year-long employment contract. And about 3 months in, I went down. I said, David, I've got to go. I can't stay, And he was like, you have an employment contract, And I was like, I do. He's like, you're just going to walk away. And I was like, I got to go. And so I left. I went and I started building houses.
I forgot all about that.
I built houses with some fraternity brothers of mine because I had a 5-year non-compete. 2 years I couldn't work for anybody.
Right.
After I left Vulcan, and a 5-year non-compete, and so so what do? We're in a great recession, so I go join some builders, and we built some houses in Brookhaven, and actually it worked out really well. Yeah. Bought this building here in Chamblee.
Right.
Was officing out of here, and then Wayne Bousma, Cherokee Concrete Pumping, approaches me and says, "Hey."
Now, did you know Wayne at Auburn?
Wayne and I were there at the same time. I knew him because he played football.
Right, but you weren't buddies.
No
back in that
connection.
Yeah.
Wayne bought Cherokee Pumping from Doug Walker in 2000. They take it over. And then, so Wayne was using all of his Auburn connections. Anybody that could that he had an Auburn connection with, he would go see. So he came and saw me. We started booking pumps, his pumps and everybody's pumps really, through our dispatch.
Yeah.
And so we would charge $50 to set up the pump, coordinate it. It was great for the end user, the customer, because we coordinated the concrete and the pump. So it wasn't like the concrete was sitting there with no pump, or the pump was sitting there with no concrete, because we were coordinating it. It was a match made in heaven. And so Wayne and I got to be buddies there. We looked at some other business opportunities over the years. Nothing ever worked out. he comes by in early 2015 and is like, hey, I got a buddy in Texas that has pumps and these volumetric trucks. Would you look at this for me and tell me what you think? So I look at it, run the numbers, and it was like, hey, this looks like a pretty good deal. Would you like a partner? And he said, absolutely. So we approach you. Here you come into the story.
I remember vividly. I'll never forget that.
You were at Vulcan, and Wayne and I come in and sit down and say, hey, we're thinking about doing this. What do y'all think? Actually, Wayne and I flew and looked at the trucks first.
Yeah.
Okay. And we were just going to look. We thought we were going to buy a used truck or whatever, but we fly to Zimmerman Industry in Pennsylvania. We sit down, tour the factory, and I don't know how well you know Wayne, but Wayne is he's an entrepreneur. He makes decisions. So we're sitting there at the table, and Wayne said, "Okay, we'll take 2 of them."
No kidding.
like
on the spot. You guys hadn't.
We had not really discussed. We had discussed some stuff, whatever. But he's like, "We'll take 2." So we come back, we sit down with you, and you buy in. You're like, hey, I want you to do this and this and this. Here's our material suppliers. See if you can use them because I'd like for our concretes to match. So if we need you to do a finish up or something like that, that's how this all was kind of going to roll. And then so I started calling those people.
Let me pause you just real quick and ask you a quick question.
Okay.
More for our listeners.
Mm-hmm.
Would you briefly, if you can do it, friend, would you briefly explain the concept of volumetric mixers and what you what you saw and how it was gonna, you know what I mean? So
volumetric concrete truck is basically a portable concrete plant on wheels. And the way it works is it works by volume. Concrete is sold by volume. Our batch plants, we're weighing up volume. We do the math, and so we know how much weight produces X amount of volume. So a batch plant weighs up, and we put it in the truck
to achieve
the volume. A volumetric actually puts it in by volume, so you calibrate the truck and everything like that. And the best way that I can describe it to people, the easiest way is the new Coke machines. When you go to a restaurant, it has the thing, and you say, I want a Coke with cherry and vanilla, okay? And you press the button, and you can make a shot glass full of Coke, and it's the right proportions.
Yes.
Or you can hold the button, and you could fill a pitcher up.
That's a great
with Coke, and it's going to be the exact same mixture. Our volumetrics, when we set it up for whatever mix you want, and we pull the handle, I can make you a perfectly mixed shovelful.
Wow.
Or I can pull the handle and let it run, and I can make you a perfectly mixed truckload. Which is 7 yards? Our trucks are 7 yards.
7 yards.
The DOT, the weight laws in Georgia are tough. A volumetric, we have to be able to make 7 yards of 6,000 straight cement.
Yeah.
So even though I'm making 3,000, I'll only be using half the cement that's in my bin if I'm making 3,000. So I'm carrying a little extra weight. I'm carrying a little extra water, but I'm still 66,000 ultimate gross vehicle weight. But it's literally a portable plant on wheels.
So what you were seeing, again, we could talk at length about this, but the kind of the possibility that you could see for the market, which, by the way, I got it when you guys came.
Bill, you were so excited that that Wayne went back and ordered 2 more trucks.
Wow.
So all of a sudden we have 4 trucks ordered, and I asked my cousin Billy, who's a Thomas salesman now. I was like, Billy, he's like, there's no way. There's no way y'all are going to keep those busy. You got to do 10 or 15 yards a day per truck, and there's all these ready mix trucks. But what we found out, Bill, was there's hand mix. You go to Home Depot, you buy the bags, and you do it. There's ready mix. Ready mix has been providing everything other than hand mix all these years, and absolutely in between those two, there's site mix.
Yes.
There's hand mix, ready mix, and in the middle is site mix, because we handle the big the big ready mix companies or anybody here in Atlanta, their bottom 200 customers who will never see a concrete salesman because they don't buy that much. That's our number one customer.
Yes.
And
no, it's and I saw that when you guys came. I remember thinking, let me say it this way: when we got into it, I had no reservation or nervousness. Ooh, this could hurt. Well, it was like
no.
In fact, it was a very collaborative.
And I'm going to give a metric that the ready mix guys listening to this will understand. So, and I believe Horace Williams or Johnny Center or one of them came up with and maybe it's in RMCA, but to me it's credited to those guys because once again we're all standing on
their shoulders.
My grandfather and the Horace Williams and the Johnny Centers and the Doug Barney Walker and all these guys, Charlie Phillips, and I could name 1,000 of these guys. The Pursleys, the Ernst, all of them. There is as I've kind of lost my
the metric.
The metric. Okay, yeah, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I was trying to name people and I lost the metric of 500 yards per truck per month,
right?
3 yards per man hour. Okay.
Yeah, yes.
Right.
The aspiration.
The average load size of about 7.25 yards.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Our metric is a little less than 1 yard per man hour. Average loads is 3 yards, and nowhere near 500 yards per truck per month. Maybe 200 or 300 yards per truck per month. And Bill, that's with us able to load and maybe go to 2 jobs and not come back to the plant. So if a ready mix guy was taking these jobs, they may be getting 1/4 of a yard per man hour because they would have to go to the job, come back, reload, go to the job. A golden day for us is the driver loads up, he makes 5 deliveries and he never comes back to the yard.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
No, I get it. That's really
my
good.
My joke is that the ready mix guys should all be sending us a Christmas card thanking us for taking the stuff that doesn't meet their metrics.
Changing gears again.
All right, go ahead.
Well, before we do, mention in addition to site mix here, tell us about Alabama.
So we had Wayne moved. He sold Cherokee Pumping, moved to Auburn, and then through another happening ended up at Lake Martin, just 17 miles north of Auburn. He's on the lake. His neighbor is a builder. They were getting poor service, so he and his son built a ready mix plant on the lake, and they did a great job setting the plant up. They had done a great job. They had just reached their top of what they were able to do because they were learning as they went. And so he wanted to get out, told Wayne and I bought it, and so we now have a plant on the south side of the lake and the north side of the lake, Dadeville and Alex City, and we are running out of the 2 plants, and it is. I spend more time on the ready mix side than I do on the volumetric side. But the volumetric side is you have guys that are basically their plant managers,
right?
And they know their truck, they know that, but they're making the concrete. But they come and go, and we do some pretty cool stuff.
You do. That's what a cool story. Let me ask you this, changing slightly gears.
All right.
What would you say is fun about this business? What do you enjoy about concrete and the industry? What are some of the things that come to mind that really, because you're a pretty energetic guy and you do have fun.
Bill, the employees that we've had over the years, Mine was I was with my family every day.
Right.
I got my cousins who we all grew up. Their fathers were in the ready mix business. My sisters. We're all. If you drew a 2-mile string from my house, a circle, you had both sets of grandparents, all my aunts and uncles, my cousins. Everybody. So we grew up very close. We ate dinner at my grandmother's every week.
Wow.
So you have that family part that selfishly I miss that every day.
Yes.
I miss that, and my cousins miss that. I have employees that miss that. That's fun when you work.
Yes.
When you work with people you like and you enjoy, and you have good employees, and it's a family atmosphere. Not a tried to create a family.
Right.
What do you call it? A organic family
atmosphere.
It's fun. It's fun. I know, a lot of the family businesses around here. I know the Walkers had it, and the Pursleys, and the Fairburn Ready Mix, and the Davises. They have that. So, and then you add. I try to explain people that concrete is the closest thing. I'm making an analogy, and just listen to the whole analogy and then you understand. It's the closest thing to being a fireman or a policeman because of the adrenaline.
Yeah.
Because you add the water, you have X amount of time.
Yes.
It's not without worrying that you're going to lose your life. The fireman,
high energy, man.
Fireman and a police officer, totally different category, but it is a perishable product.
Right.
It requires a special vehicle that it only delivers this product, and it has to be there. You can't even get a pizza or a refrigerator delivered. They say the cable company. I mean, if the cable company were run by ready mix guys, we'd be on time. And I know the big joke is that we're always late, but that's a whole nother dispatching thing. We're only as good as the order before you, that they tell us exactly what they needed and everything like that. But it's just exciting.
Yeah, it is.
You have trucks running around, materials coming in, materials going out.
As I've said repeatedly in these interviews when we talk about this subject, I mean, it's a sophisticated business. It's not like just load up a bunch of materials
People
and
have
dump
no
them
idea.
on.
Most regulated product on the planet.
Yes.
The water has an ASTM. The rock has an ASTM. Sand, cement. How we mix it. How we pour it. How we deliver it. How they test it. Every single portion of concrete, from the moment it comes out of the ground to the moment it's poured back on the ground, there is some type of regulation. Or
statute or whatever
standard.
Yeah, standards. No, that's a great point. And it all kind of fuels the excitement. And some of those days when you want to turn around and run as far as you can from the business.
The day that the driver spills it going down the road, or there's bad days.
Well, and let's just be utterly frank. There's the day that you poured a big bridge deck. Woo! And you learn that
a low break or
there was something bad, and then you're tearing out. So there's the exposure, and the risk is unbelievable.
And the risk factor has increased now as concrete gets more and more technically advanced. They're doing stuff with concrete now that I never dreamed. The ultra high performance and the
and to be clear to some who aren't super familiar with the industry, those, for the lack of a better word, catastrophic failures, thankfully, are very, very few. Very far between. The batching, the technology that we have, it's really unusual. I'll go as far as to say, from my experience, in the business, it's just extremely rare when you get low break reports. It's rare that you determine that they were truly
a low break.
Yeah. Do you agree with that?
I totally agree. Once technology caught up in the testing, I mean the computers, everything's computerized. everything's better now. Everything's
Right.
better.
Consistency from the mills too. The cement consistency.
Oh
generally.
wow, everything. And going back to the volumetrics, it was invented by a farmer in Pennsylvania in the '60s.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, Harold Zimmerman. And those trucks have come technologically, and right now they're on the cusp of becoming really computerized. But they make incredible concrete. I laughed at them when we were in the ready mix business. I would see the in the magazine, and I would kind of scoff and laugh at them, but they're very, very precise machines and make very durable,
Yes.
long-lasting, excellent concrete.
Boy, this is so many questions. I got to be careful. I wanted to get a couple more in, and we can come back. I mean, like we were talking about earlier. I mean, there's so much we could do 5 installments, especially with your so many years and you're in the industry, and then being involved in a variety of related industries. But one question I've got, and this is a tough question for you, I think, given your background, but if let's face it, there's so many people that influence us in the course of our life. So for me to ask you, could you point out maybe like the greatest influences,
Sure.
and in what way they shaped your philosophy of life and business and management, so on and so forth? You know what I mean?
Sure.
I know it's a tough one
Sure.
because you don't want to leave anybody out.
I
but
don't, and I would love to just sit here and name people all day. But I mean, my grandfather, my dad, my 2 uncles. I've named them. Tony Cape.
Yes.
My cousins that I worked with. But I go back to JJ, because I worked beside JJ on the yard.
Yes.
I worked beside
What did you
James
learn
Lindsay.
from JJ? How did JJ influence you, for example? Just to
I mean, because JJ
his
his work ethic. I mean, my dad and my grandfather's work ethic was beyond. But James Lindsay and JJ, who worked usually beside my dad, Arthur Ivy, those guys that worked beside my dad, because I grew up in the shop with my dad. And so I would go do the stuff, or my grandfather handled certain things. Anyway, I would go work with them. But I got to work with these guys separate from my dad, because my dad and grandfather and my
Right.
uncles, they all had jobs to perform.
Right.
They would give us a task, and then we would go do it, shoveling or whatever we were doing.
I get it. I see the picture. I mean, there were many
Plowing up
influencers.
the leftover concrete. But
Yeah.
JJ always hauled the most concrete and had the cleanest truck. So there was never anybody could ever, they would say, hey, your truck's dirty. Oh, I was busy or whatever. But
Look at his truck.
But JJ always had the cleanest truck, and he always hauled the most concrete.
Right.
Because JJ was always there. JJ finished concrete. So I got to work with it. It actually was maybe the greatest episode of Undercover Boss ever.
Yeah.
Because I got to see
Yes.
I got to see
I
what
get
was
it.
going on, because employees weren't hiding anything
No,
from me as
no.
I'm growing up, and I see
The real
the
person.
real deal. And,
and something
Tony Cape, once again, I mentioned Tony Cape.
Yes.
The man taught me how to sell. And,
Yes.
And,
He filled in I know, I hear
a
you.
rising tide lifts all boats. All these people had a
Yes.
hand in.
I don't want to forget. I want to say something here at this point. I thought about it when we were talking earlier, and I don't want to miss it. But something that I noticed when we first came together, Fulton and Tucko, in 2011, and I had the really fascinating opportunity to try to knit together 2 family businesses and cultures inside of a big corporation, which is another story for another day. But here's what I want to say to you and to listeners, that one thing that I noticed very quickly as I began to interact with Tucko personnel. I mean, it was very conspicuous, very obvious. We kind of alluded to it. One thing was really strong work ethic. I mean, you talk about people that could just work. I mean, really work. And that's what I noticed. But here's the other thing: resourcefulness. Resourcefulness, meaning, and I'm trying to think of how to boil it down. I mean, and with you, getting to know you, you run into a problem, and it's not like, oh well. No, it's like, okay, we're going to figure this thing out. You guys, it's like it's in the Tucko DNA. Just super creative, super resourceful. Does that make sense?
It does. And you and I talked about it, and the resourcefulness came, Bill, from when like 70% of our business disappeared on July of 2007.
Yes. It just started.
It was the worst. I would never wish that upon anybody in business, that all of a sudden you come in and you're 45,000 single family housing permits pulled in Georgia in 2006, 4,500 pulled in 2008.
Unreal.
And if every house had 100 yards, that was almost 4.5 million yards, 4 million, whatever, gone.
And and does that create resourcefulness?
Well, we're trying to figure out how to shutter plants and how to efficiently do everything. I mean,
scale down.
You and I've had lots of conversations about this. And my dad always told me as a kid, one day it'll be like somebody turned the lights off. And yeah, being a business owner is great during the busy, awesome times when you're making money. But that was the worst ever. Jeff McWhorter, my cousin, was the HR guy.
Right.
And we had about 300 employees when the Great Recession hit. And he personally went to every 225 firings.
Wow.
Layoffs, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah. With your family, and they're like family.
We came up with Plan A, and then Plan B, and then Plan C, and at the end, you're cutting guys that are like. I'm going to give some advice right here.
Yeah, do it, because that's the last question. You might as well segue into it.
This is when we had our meetings. And thank you for saying that about Tucko employees, because I was proud of them. They were hard workers. The guys it was like a family. It was literally like a family. I mean, I can't stress that enough. But we would have an annual meeting every year. And I got to stand up and address everybody, just like Jeff and Buddy and Chris and Billy and Slick and my dad and my grandfather and everybody. We would have a great meeting, and I would always say, if you were standing here and we needed to do something, perform a task, and I had a buck knife with a single blade, you can come out. Or I had a Swiss Army knife, that had a bottle opener and a pair of scissors and a toothpick and a tweezers and a serrated edge and a screwdriver and all that. If you had those two sitting there, what are you going to choose? What are you going to choose? You can choose the buck knife that can really only do one thing, maybe two or three things. You may break the blade, or the Swiss Army knife that has all these implements and can do multiple things. It may not be the best at all those things, but it can do multiple things. And I would tell everybody at Tucko, we need you to be a Swiss Army knife.
Yes.
If you see some trash, pick it up. Don't wait for the trash blade to come pick it up. Be the trash blade. And that's two things of advice. Learn as much as you can about wherever you work.
Yes. Because
that makes you more valuable.
Yes.
Because if there is a Great Recession, we're gonna the buck knives are leaving.
And you know what just popped into my head? David Grayson, when I spoke with David a month ago, one of his strong points of advice was very much like that. He said, make yourself indispensable, which is what you're, another way of saying.
I'm saying it a different way. Make yourself indispensable.
Learn and
make yourself indispensable. That goes for everything. It doesn't matter if you're at a concrete plant or if you're working in the paper industry like you came from.
Right.
Learn as much as you can. And then the second thing I'm going to tell, and this is to the family-owned businesses that are still here.
Yeah.
If you sell, make it be the last, like you've got to, because you can't recreate what you have.
That's a great
you don't
point.
Understand. And it's nothing against the verticals. The verticals have a place. Everybody has a place. But I'm just saying, you don't understand what you have.
Right. That's a great point.
Until it's gone.
Yep.
And so...
no, that's a really good point. We got time for one more.
All right.
No. And it's this is a selfish question, okay?
Yes.
It's you know me. I do want to hear from you because you have been very, very active in the Georgia Ready Mix Concrete Association. So take just a few minutes. Why join? Why be part of the association? What is it? What's the value?
The information that is provided or accumulated, as you get people here and we're discussing an industry problem. Not, once again, it's what we're doing right now with the testing work to trying to improve the field CTAC, concrete CTAC.
Testing, adherence, collaboration.
I mean, why would you not be a part of that?
Right.
Why would you not want to help people understand why our product
must be tested
correctly? Because once again, Bill, 99.9% of the time when there's a low break, it wasn't the concrete, it was the testing. Yeah. And I'm not throwing the testing guys under. It could have been that a loader ran by and shook the fresh cylinder and the aggregate fell out,
or the superintendent was made it hard or didn't have a curing box or this or that.
Somebody sat down on it and ate lunch, or the box got knocked over, or the testing company, the guy had an accident on the way to the job and he couldn't pick him up in the correct amount of time. Once again, highly regulated in how all this is done, and so the association provides somewhere that we can legally discuss things, not business like nuts and bolts, like how we operate our business or what we do this or that or whatever, because that
customers and pricing, we can talk about everything but customers and pricing.
Right. And so why not promote our product? Why not be, because there are guys in this association that and I mentioned them earlier, the David Blacks and the guys that have been around, Mike Taylor, and I just could name 1,000 guys that have been around that I call Nick Maloof.
Yes.
Nick Maloof. I could call Nick Maloof because I did a lot of our concrete design, and I got to be involved in the setting up our testing side of Tucko. And if I had a question, I called Nick Maloof, Dan Brown, all these concrete experts that Dale Henderson didn't know
right
anything about it. And so there were people I could call, Mike Taylor, if I had operational questions about trucks and plants and stuff like that. And these men freely shared, and they were all members of an association that freely shared information that made it better for my customer and our customers and our community that buys ready mix from us.
That's a great point. Anything else?
Just the innovation that comes from that, how things change, and once again, the legislative, I can't say enough about all of our committees,
Yes.
legislative. And I'm the Plant and Fleet
Chairman.
chair, and we do the driver challenge,
skills,
and stuff like that. Now, and it's been neat how we've come up with certain committees don't meet as much because Plant and Fleet's not changing crazily, but I know we're probably going to kick up here because we're going to have the new emissions coming in, and that's going to be something that we're all going to want to know about when that starts coming through. And
to your point, what you just alluded to, and I want to point it out because you hear the word committee and sometimes you cringe, right? Meetings for the sake of meetings and all of that. But I think you and I determined as we work, launching our new committees, that we were going to make sure we're chopping wood. We're not going to meet just to meet. We meet to plan our rodeo, our driver skills competition, or if we have a once a year annual, like a roundtable forum to just exchange notes. And then if we have some particular industry, like you're saying on the missions, hey, we can come together, we can have that discussion, and the association can help tackle.
And our testing
the CTAC is another
committee. Once again, all these committees are doing a very important job. When you stepped in and you kind of refocused our lens of the association, everything's very deliberate. Everything, we don't have any committees that aren't performing a task.
Yes.
And I said it earlier, a rising tide lifts all boats. A well-run committee, a well-run association lifts all boats.
Well, and I think what I'm seeing, and it's been exciting, is that just the level of engagement of our members over the last couple of years, and really for us, the staff, part of our role is just create that opportunity to get people together to make good things happen.
Right.
And I go back to, and we'll end on our mission. Our mission of the GRMCA is to help our members be safe, be compliant, and be prosperous.
Yes.
Lift all the boats. And so, but listen, I can't thank you enough, Dale. And first of all, just the friendship has been wonderful. It's great. You're a pretty good landlord most of the time.
Listen, the sink's not running.
Fix our sink.
The sink's not running. The AC's running.
The AC. Anyway, we'll get over that. But no, seriously, it's been good to spend time together. I learned a lot. I know a lot about you, but I always learn from these interviews. So I just say thank you and really appreciate you.
I can't thank you enough. Once again, thank you because it's nice to be able to share your story. It is. So thank you.